evening, everybody. I'm Mick. Some of you may know me from the salon in Louisburgh. Others may just know you from the person that Des talks about behind the camera. He's finally convinced me to be this side of the camera, and as you can tell, I'm really enjoying it. So today I'm going to show you how to make some pumpkin pie. I'm going to start off by making some short crust pastry. But then for my here's one I made earlier, I actually have some puff pastry that I got in a certain German supermarket that I can't tell you is little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with 225 grams of flour, just plain flour, and pop it into a mixer. Now you don't have to have a mixer for it, it's just that I'm going to look at it does. And then 100 grams of butter, pop it straight in, and spread it on low. So I'm also going to add just a little pinch of salt into it, as you should with all of your baked goods. Once your dough has kind of come together, it looks like, I suppose, you go past the breadcrumb stage and it'll look like there's big, almost big lumps. What you do is throw in 2 tablespoons of water to begin with and see if it all comes together. You see it all starting to come off the side of the bowl now, it's all sticking together itself. Once it's that far, pop it up. Take off your spade attachment. Now you can't do this by hand either. So if you wanted, what I would say to do is put your flour into a big bowl, massive bowl, biggest one you can find. Cut up your butter into little cubes, throw it into cold water, iced water if you can. And as you take your butter out and put it in, it'll almost eliminate the need to add in your water at the end. It'll come together, it'll turn into like fine breadcrumbs, and the more you keep working it, the more it'll come together. So I have this, it's like a firm dough, and what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it in cling film. We're going to pop it into the fridge to rest for 35 minutes. So the next thing I want to do is light the oven. Now my oven is from possibly the 1960s, so I have no idea what the numbers on it actually mean. They're supposed to be gas marks, but they're not really. I tend to go for between 5 and 6. That's about 160 degrees to all your fan oven people out there. About 180 if you don't have a fan. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to line my flan tin. I have 2 of them, I only need 1. So I'm going to take my butter. Now if you actually rub it into the edges, you will get plenty there. Just to separate out with your finger again, just make sure that everywhere is covered, and we're going to give it a quick dusting with flour afterwards. So this is a loose bottom flan tin. It doesn't have to be, it just makes it easier for taking it out at the end. No, it does. But so some of them that don't have a loose bottomed base, if you take, when you put your pastry in, if you make 2 thin little strips out of your parchment paper and kind of stuff them down like an X, that when it comes to your pie being cooked, you probably need some help because you probably haven't got 4 hands. But you take 2 people each side, you can lift it straight out of the tin and pop it onto the counter. So now we're going to throw a little bit of flour. I say a little bit of flour, I'm using a lot of flour. Panic. So this is not one I made earlier, as we discussed before. But we're going to take our roll of puff pastry from that German supermarket that I'm not naming. Never put a timber rolling pin in the dishwasher. But we'll ignore that. So I'm just going to flour my rolling pin, and I'm going to roll it out a little bit more because we have plenty in here. And I'm going to choose, quite lucky that there's baking parchment. So I'm going to roll it over and put my tin in underneath, and I'm going to pop it straight in. So then we'll peel off our baking parchment and just pop your pastry down to make sure you fill every inch of your tin. To make my life easy, I just want to give it not a tight trim because it's going to shrink a lot in the next half an hour. You'd be very surprised about how much it will shrink. So this is a video this time, it's not a picture again.
Yeah, it's a video this time, okay?
Thanks.
I'm not used to being this side of the camera.
The science is on you. So now we have a pumpkin. So what we're going to do is we are going to take, as if we're going to carve it, we're going to take his head off. We're going to scoop out all of his guts. And
Guts, eh?
yeah, if you want, definitely keep the seeds. Everybody loves pumpkin seeds. You can dry them out and they're fantastic. So what I have here is just a small pumpkin from that German supermarket that we're not calling Lidl.
How expensive are these?
These are really cheap. I do believe that this size pumpkin, which is about a kilo weight, was $1.40, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, in Tesco's and all the other supermarkets, they have them in €1, €2 and €3. And the €3 ones are enormous.
Yeah, now, the enormous ones, they're great for carving, not great for eating. And they're quite pale, they're bred to be bigger so that you can carve a good face. They're not bred for cooking. The smaller ones tend to have a better flavour. So in the background here, you will see some winter squashes. Last time we took a picture, I called them summer squashes, but I'm right this time.
And you complained because I only took a photo.
So, these are winter squashes. Don't forget, all of these, if you've grown them, they're all edible. They might be a pain to peel, but they are all edible. Treat them like a butternut squash. Anything you do with a butternut squash, make wedges, do whatever you like with them. They're fantastic. So, my lovely assistant has already hollowed out a pumpkin and peeled it for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it on the stovetop to cook for about 15 minutes until it's like really tender, almost like a potato when you've cooked a potato. So what I would say is to just turn them on, move that so we don't set the house on fire, and pop a lid on it, leave it to simmer for 15 minutes or so. So I have my pastry case back out of the fridge. Now what I did do is when I was taking it out of the fridge, I actually cracked it. So I'm just going to wet my finger and I'll be back and I'll show you how to fix it. So if you wet your finger with a little bit of warm water, what you can do is, if we get the camera right close there, you'll see you can push your crack together and just push along it and you'll seal it all up again. It's like it never happened. So this has been resting for about half an hour. You can go any time after 15 minutes. It shouldn't shrink anymore. I'd leave it half an hour just to be sure. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rolling pin and I'm going to roll across the top here to cut it all off. The same over here and here. So that cuts off all of the excess, and you see what it has done is it has made like a little ridge in here. So we will go by again and just give it a quick press all the way around. And what that will do is, if you have any shrinkage in the oven, you'll see down the edge here, it's actually lifted just above the edge of the tart case. So it does allow a little bit for shrinkage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some baking paper and blind bake it. This is going to be noisy for a second, so bear with me. So, scrunch up my paper, that way you can be sure that it's going to fill the whole tart. I'm going to pop it in. Now what I do have here are ceramic baking beads. If you don't have them, don't worry.
Ceramic baking, pardon?
Ceramic baking beans. I think I said beads. So they're literally just, they're like little balls of plate material that aren't glazed or anything. All there is to add weight. If you don't have those, don't worry. You can use rice, which is what I normally use. So I have my baking rice, as I call it here. It's been used quite a few times. You see, it's like a bit of a funny colour.
It will never be eaten.
Yes, no, once it's been baked 2 or 3 times, there's no cooking it again. So don't be afraid. Just fill it right up. And you can give it like a little pat down. Now, depending on your oven, you might need to trim some of your baking paper. I'm going to just trim off some of the edges because I have a gas oven especially. I don't want to set it on fire. Pick up your tart. Be very careful if you have a loose bottomed flying case, because you will put your hand through the middle of it at some point and get rice everywhere. So I'm going to pop it into the middle shelf of the oven for 15 minutes now. While you're waiting for your tart to blind bake and your pumpkin to boil, don't forget to pop over onto Louisburgh Community TV's Teespring site, and you can order yourself a lovely mug. There's some lovely baby girls, t-shirts, hoodies. We'll see if Charlotte's ready with the link this time. If it's kind of translucent, it's not quite ready yet to take the rice off. So we're going to pop it back into the oven, and as this is puff pastry, so you'll see it definitely over here. just in here, you'll see this very translucent looking. So some of it is ready. You'll see that we have a nice, it hasn't shrank too much. It's filled out all of the little corners. So it is looking good. So we're going to pop it back into the oven again for another 2 minutes. Our pumpkin has been boiling for about 15 minutes. So it is, I suppose, at a point where if your potato was this soft, it would kind of break up when you prod it with your fork. So as you can see here, it breaks quite easily. I have my pumpkin that has been strained and is absolutely blisteringly hot at the moment. You have a couple of choices here. If your kitchen is quite limited in implements, weapons, attachments, whatever you want to call them, everybody will have a fork, I hope. Possibly a save. You will get away with just a fork, mash everything down as small as you can get it, as if it was, just to make sure that there's no lumps in it. Or you can use your trusty old potato masher. I have a good strong one here. Mash it all down. It's cheat. And I'm going to use my stick blender. If you have a food processor either, you can throw it in there and get it as thin and as pure like as possible. I'm about to make a lot of noise, so I'll show it to you when it's all done. Our pumpkin slash butternut squash slash whatever you used, pureed almost like baby food. So there's no lumps, it's smooth, there's nothing in it, literally just pumpkin. Hopefully that translucenty bottom will have started to fill out a little bit. Pick up both sides, don't be afraid, it's okay. So the translucent, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to make it out as well as you can see in real life, I suppose. It's not quite as translucent as it was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prick it with a fork. I'm going to pop it back into the oven just until this has cooked a little bit. So what you can do is you can egg wash it. We have 2 eggs that we're going to use for our filling anyway, so I'm just going to egg wash it straight out of that.
Ah, here you go, here you go.
Thanks. So, quick dip. And you're not trying to wet it. This is a rudimentary brush is all you are looking for. You don't want an eggy layer between your filling and your pie crust. And we're going to pop this back into the oven. Now, I've used 140 grams of brown sugar. It has just a little bit more caramelly taste. You can just use caster sugar if you like. It'll make it a darker colour as well. So if you want it to be like really orange, make sure you use white sugar. This is going to brown it down a bit. If that's probably not the correct term, but it'll make it look a deeper colour. So I am going to combine all of my dry ingredients.
So that's I have 140 grams of sugar of your choice.
Yes. I have half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I have half a teaspoon of nutmeg. Now I've used fresh nutmeg and I've grated it myself. If you have dried nutmeg, ready ground nutmeg, whatever you have yourself, use half a teaspoonful. Just make sure you get it nice and small. You can even chop it if you like. I'm lucky I have a microplane, so it's almost like dust. Pop it in there. And again, salt, because everybody loves salt. And pop it in. Salt draws out the flavours of everything, regardless of whether it be sweet or savoury. You have 140 grams of sugar. 1 pinch of salt isn't going to make it savoury. Don't worry. So we're going to pop that in. We're going to give it a quick mix around in on top of our pumpkin.
If you want, you can wait until the pumpkin cools, I presume. But adding the cold sugar to it will bring it down cool enough?
Yes. So this is I suppose it's almost like an egg-based custard that you're putting in. Egg is the setting ingredients in your pie. So it's just to make sure that you don't cook the egg before it goes into the oven. Just make sure that's where it cooks, because that's how it's going to set. So you'll notice I've put in my dry ingredients. It's got quite watery. You can see there are still a few lumps. So I'm going to take my stick blender back again. And I have my pie. Now you'll see the base has risen a little bit. We're not going to panic too much. We're going to cover it in a second. It's completely opaque now. There's no translucent left in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop my eggs slowly so we don't cook them in here. Put it in. You're going to add 175 of cream if you have it, milk if you don't, and it should all be good. So then we're going to fill up our pastry case. I've just dropped the fork into it, so we're just going to throw it into the pastry case and hope that the fork doesn't fall in.
And go.
So now that we have it full, open the oven door first. pop over to it. Now what I would say is after you pop it in, just shake your oven door so you can see how much it actually ripples. If you're looking like me and you have a freestanding oven, you can shake it from the side. You can see there's a lot of ripple there. So you know how much, I suppose, it needs to set. So what I have done is I have turned my oven up to what should be gas mark 7, 180 degrees with a fan and 200 degrees without a fan. And we'll leave it there for about 40 minutes until it's almost... Okay, so we're back in the kitchen again. So I'm going to shake my oven and see how we're looking. So if you come right down here, and if you give it a shake, it doesn't really jiggle anymore. See that kind of wave, I suppose, is gone off it. When you shake it, it's quite set and solid. So we're going to take it out and leave it to cool. And that is it. What I would say to do with it is take it out of your oven, leave it in its tin for 20-25 minutes before you try and do anything with it. Just, I suppose, to let everything settle. Then take it off and stick it on a wire rack so you don't get a soggy bottom, as Mary Berry would say. So while we're here as well, I had a little bit of my pumpkin mix left over, so I'm actually going to roll out the short crust pastry and pop it into the oven. So if you come over here to the counter with me, so I'm going to show you about rolling out your short crust pastry if you are adventurous enough to make it. So what I have here is I have a bowl of just plain flour for dusting, my rolling pin, and my pastry that has just come out of the fridge. It has rested for probably about 45 minutes at this stage. Half an hour is enough. The longer the better, I suppose, but half an hour you will get away with. Dust my countertop generously. Give it good covering in flour. Again, don't be afraid of the flour. Loads of it. We're going to get you to cover your rolling pin. Make sure it is white. And we're then pat it out, give it a helping hand. Because that is a square dish, I'm going to roll my pastry to a square. And that should be it. That should be big enough. Oh, not quite, let's make it a little bit longer. I'm cracking a little bit cold. I should have left it out of the fridge for a few minutes, just to, I suppose, not to come to room temperature, but so there's a little bit of warmth in it, so it will bend rather than crack. So, remember I was saying earlier about if you don't have a loose bottom tin, cut out 2 strips of parchment paper, pop them in the bottom. Because you have your dish floured and buttered, they will stick a little bit. And just, I suppose, a tip from me, when you're trying to fit this in, these are going to get in your way. So hold it down with your thumb and tuck them in underneath. When it's not stuck, I'm just using the knife to give myself a little helping hand. That's exactly, so you see here now, I have 3 of my 4 corners have actually broken off. So you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little cup with some water in it, which I have from making the pastry earlier. So all I'm going to do is see, I have one side of my pastry which is really floured and one side that isn't. So the side that isn't is the side you want to face up. So all we're going to do is we're going to flatten it out with your fingers to the shape that you need. Press it on. Make sure you have all of the space you want covered. Then just dampen your finger tiny amount and just rub the edges so that it will create a cool join. I probably did the wrong corner there. We're going to do the... Good.